Within a month of Lord Mountbatten's arrival in India, Jawaharlal, the firm opponent of partition, had become, if not a supporter, at least acquiescent towards the idea. When I became aware that Lord Mountbatten was thinking in terms of dividing India and had persuaded Jawaharlal and Patel, I was deeply distressed. I realized that the country was moving towards a great danger. Now that Sardar Patel and even Jawaharlal Nehru had become supporters of partition, Gandhiji remained my only hope. Later that day, 31st March, Gandhiji met Lord Mountbatten. He saw him again the next day and still again on 2nd April. Sardar Patel came to him soon after he returned from his first meeting with Lord Mountbatten and was closeted with him for over 2 hours. What happened during this meeting, I do not know. But when I met Gandhiji again, I received the greatest shock of my life, for I found that he too had changed. He was still not openly in favor of partition, but he no longer spoke so vehemently against it. What surprised and shocked me even more was he had began to repeat the arguments which Sardar Patel had already used. For over 2 hours I pleaded with him, but could make no impression on him. The details of Lord Mountbatten's plan were not yet published, but I guess that it would entail the partition of India. He returned to Delhi on 30 May and on June 2 held discussions with the representatives of the Congress and the Muslim League. On the 3rd of June, a white paper was issued which gave all the details of the plan. The statement of the British government will be found in the appendix, and I need only say that my worst fears were realized. The price for freedom was the partitioning of India into 2 states. The publication of this statement meant the end of all hopes for preserving the unity of India. This was the first time that the cabinet mission plan was discarded and partition accepted officially. In trying to explain why the Labour government changed its attitude, I came to the painful conclusion that its action was governed more by consideration of British than Indian interests. The AICC met on 14th June 1947. I have attended many meetings of the AICC, but this was one of the strangest that it was my misfortune to attend. Congress, which had always fought for the unity and independence of India, was now considering an official resolution for the division of the country. When the resolution was put to vote, 29 voted for it and 15 against. Even Gandhiji's appeal could not persuade more members to vote for the partition of the country. The resolution was no doubt passed, but what was the condition of the people's minds? All hearts were heavy at the idea of partition. Hardly anyone could accept the resolution without mental reservations. Even those who accepted the partition had all their feelings against it." Unquote. A fair reading of the above account will show that partition was forced upon the country due to the intransigence of Muhammad Ali Jinnah and Lord Mountbatten's plan to safeguard British interests. I have read these excerpts because these excerpts from the book are a measure of the man that was Maulana Abul Kalam Azad. He was an Indian and a Muslim. He was an Indian and a Muslim. He was a nationalist, patriot, and totally secular. More than anyone else, he was able to foresee the consequences of the two-nation theory. He was a passionate advocate until the very last of the unity of India. He was able to reflect the true feelings of millions of people, both within and outside the Congress party. He had always fought for the unity and independence of India and for love and brotherhood among all communities, particularly between Hindus and Muslims. As we remember him today, let us also remember his work, his words, his actions, and his legacy. I have the honor to release these commemorative coins.